Over the last 2 days, we've discussed everything from China to Afghanistan, terror, economy, double-digit growth. But the two things we should have learned by now is that we are likely to be ambushed by the things that we pay least attention to. And so the one common theme running through these 2 days is a focus on climate change and environment. And we had some debate about how to name this session, whether to say meet the dynamic young women keeping India green or keeping India safe. And I think the two things are really very interconnected. Mr. Puri just shared some very startling statistics. I'd just like to give one or two more very quickly, which is that when we're talking about a 5 trillion economy, et cetera, what we forget is that the cost of economic degradation is 3.75 trillion rupees, which is 5.7% of our GDP. That we are unleashing 400 million liters of wastewater into our rivers every year, which is creating a 9% reduction in revenue, agricultural revenue, 16% reduction in productivity, and that's actually entering the food chain, and that's the food we eat. And so there's a health cost, illnesses cost. 70% of our surface water is polluted. When Mr. Nitin Gadkari was the water minister, he released a report which said 600 million Indians are under water stress. So, while we now talk a lot about fossil fuels, we are aware of climate change. It's not even enough to call it climate change anymore. It's climate emergency, and then one step further to climate justice. But at the building block of that is the environment, is resource pollution, and the extinction of species. But the moment we heard the word biodiversity, ecosystems, we kind of blank out. We think it's boring. Sitting here in the cities, we focus on buildings. So for me, at least, it's a real privilege to be doing this session. And I'd like to call on stage 3 young women in their 20s who are really at the forefront of creating consciousness and fighting this fight for India. They're part of a global youth movement that's waking the world up. Greta Thunberg speaks at the UN, but we ourselves have been more neglectful, sometimes even more unjust to these young people. So the first one that I'd like to introduce is Disha Ravi, who's one of the co-founders of the Fridays for Future in India, the India chapter. Unfortunately, earlier this year, she was jailed for several months, and we have promised not to go into the case. But when you meet the young person behind the sort of poltergeist that was created, we'll understand really what is being done on our behalf. So welcome, Disha. The other person I'd like to call on stage is Malaika Vaz. Malaika is a National Geographic explorer. She's a windsurfer. She's a certified pilot. She's a deep sea diver. She's an endurance horse rider. She's an adventure sports athlete. She's also a National Geographic explorer. She's made films on predators, on the manta ray. She's done an international investigation, won a lot of awards, is a presenter. Has her own company called The Untamed Planet. And there's Gunjan Menon, who's, again, a wildlife filmmaker, a conservationist. All 3 are in their 20s. Gunjan has her film, Firefox Guardian, was nominated for the Student BAFTA. She's got awards, more than 30 awards from 15 countries. She works with women in Africa. And now let me tell you their ages. Gunjan is 28, Malaika is 24, and Disha this week turned 23. So we're really, really happy to have them. Thank you very much for being here. When I was speaking earlier, I just said that typically, because we're so far away, we go for holidays to these beautiful places. But the moment one hears the word biodiversity, ecosystem, everyone blanks out. So Disha, let me start with you. Why do ecosystems matter? When we say, don't build this because the bullfrog will die, why should we care?
Okay, sorry, I'm laughing. I find that question quite funny because ecosystem is often seen as a very different part from ourselves, and even the environment is often seen as a separate being, when the truth is we are dependent on the environment. We are dependent on clean air, clean water, the forests, and the rivers, and the ocean. So when you ask me why it's important to protect an ecosystem, you can understand why I find it a little funny, because we are dependent on it, and we are all part of the ecosystem, and often the environmental activism is seen just about the forest, but the truth is environmental activism is about the humans, because we are part of the ecosystem. We aren't separate from it. We are Earth defending itself.
Thank you, Disha. In fact, Christiana Figueres, who was instrumental in bringing 195 countries onto the climate table, said the one thing we have to stop saying is that we're trying to save the planet. We're not trying to save the planet. We're really trying to save ourselves, And Malaika, you're at the heart of communication through your films. You use your camera for advocacy. You've made amazing films on the manta ray, on predators, as I said. So how do you use your films and cinema to communicate,
Thank you, Shoma. I think, as storytellers, very often, it's our job to keep the attention on a subject once that moment has passed. And take the pandemic, for example. Right now, everyone's talking about it. It's a really important moment in time as we combat corona. But the reason we're in this situation is because of our extractive relationship with the natural world. And as a filmmaker, I've been, documenting these illegal wildlife markets in Hong Kong and Guangzhou way before the pandemic started. And I think it's important to keep telling these stories of how we can fundamentally reshift and change our relationship with the planet right now. And I think when it comes to wildlife conservation specifically, India has done a phenomenal job. We've managed to protect tigers and elephants and sharks and all kinds of species better than many countries. But we also are in a bit of a pickle right now. And I think it's important for us to see this moment in time as a time when we can actually take a leadership role on the global stage and show that India can actually be an exemplary country with protecting our wildlife and combating climate change.
But Malaika, before I come to you, Gunjan, you are very different in the way you're making wildlife films, You kind of get up close. I described that you're a great adventure sports enthusiast, and you bring some of that adrenaline to the way you're doing films. Typically we think of documentaries with that voiceover, and you see pictures, and you still feel very distant. I was asking you about communicating, that what is the unique sort of quality that you bring to it, and why do you do that?
So I think
Talk
Shoma,
about some of your experiences.
Yeah, I think I get a lot of flack for this because sometimes I get unnecessarily close to animals because I obviously am safe and I'm making sure the animal is comfortable. I end up hiking up mountains and diving with sharks and doing all of these sometimes crazy, dangerous things. And often the question is, why do you have to hike up a mountain to tell a story about why that mountain needs to be protected? And that's a good question, honestly. But the reason is because if we tell boring stories about the natural world, we are going to lose people's attention. And as a filmmaker, I'm not just competing with everyone else on National Geographic. I'm competing with everyone else on India Today and people on, NDTV and everyone else out there. And if I want to get someone's attention after a long day at work, I need to make sure that my films are exciting and that a family wants to watch it together. So you come for the adventure, you come for me doing stuff like you can see in the background, but you stay for the conservation message. You stay for the fact that the science is out there. We need to protect our planet, and we probably just have like 10 or 15 or maximum 20 years to do that.
Right. So I'm going to come back to, you've been to all 7 continents, and we'll ask you for some of your experiences. But Gunjan, let me come to you. You've made the Firefox Guardian, which really looked at the red panda and the relationship with the community. So talk to us about that, this interrelatedness, what we were talking about, the interconnectedness. Why should the red panda disappear matter to us? What did you find about that?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Shoma, for that question. And it's interesting that we are talking about red pandas at this stage now, because when I set out to make the film, and I was talking about red pandas to everyone, with everyone, and I had just read an article in the newspaper which said that they had been downlisted to and uplisted to become endangered. They used to be vulnerable and they were endangered, so I wanted to do something about it. And I was talking to people about red pandas, And to my surprise, or like you can call it my ignorance, one of my friends said that I didn't know pandas came in red. So that's when I realized that how can I expect people to protect a species they don't even know exists? So that's when I started doing more research that how can I tell this story. And that's when I came across the protagonist of my film, Menuka, and she is a simple village girl from a remote corner in Nepal, and she works with Red Panda Network, and I saw a blog article where it was titled Role of Women in Conservation. And she was standing right in the center surrounded by 20 men. And it said, if not me, who will protect red pandas? And I was instantly drawn, and I started then realizing that this is the story I need to tell. It's about the people. It's about the local communities and their role in red panda conservation. And that actually worked. It worked with people if someone is not interested in wildlife, but they were fascinated by her passion towards wildlife. And this is just one example. Like when you're making films, when I was watching films as a teenager, I only saw films about pristine natural worlds. I was seeing films where everything was okay with the polar bears. It was just fuzzy, cute animals. And I had no idea growing up that our natural world was in so much danger. The polar ice caps were melting, and there's so much destruction happening. So that's when I sort of also realized that this is the lens I want to show. I want to show people, where are the people in these stories? Where are the communities? Where's the problem? And like Malaika said, nobody wants to watch films that just talk about doom and gloom. So I sort of shifted the lens to a story of hope, because there are people working at the grassroots, there are communities who have dedicated their lives to protect a species. So that's how
Malaika,
I
I'm just going to
stories.
butt in there. Very quickly, why was this community protecting the red panda? Was it just in like the fact that they appreciated it, or was there connectivity? Is it just ethos? What did you find?
I asked them the same question, and they said, if not us, who will? This is our forest. These are our red pandas. Why would we not do this? And to them, it was bizarre that I was asking, why are you saving them? And it just put things into perspective for me that it's a way of life. Conservation is a way of life for them. For us, it's about going to a place, saving a species, like you said. And for them, it's just something they have to do because it's theirs. There's this ownership of land. And that was something really beautiful.
Right. So Disha, let me come to you. You know, we've been reeling out these statistics, but the fact is that our habitats are disappearing, you know, and there's a lot of stress on that. So one, you've been very, very active in this zone. You also are looking at government and policy and, you know, why things are eroding the way they are. So talk to me a little bit about which are the habitats in India that are under stress, why does it matter, and what is the government doing wrong in its policies?
Thank you for that, Shoma. Because you started with habitat, let me come with one statement that people often make is that our forest cover is increasing. But if you look closely at the data, you will see that it's the open forest cover that's increasing. And open forest cover, if you look at the definition of it, it's so vague, and sometimes it's defined as just 30, 40 trees in like a park. So you can go down to a park, find trees that are just, sticking or growing next to each other, and that would be considered a forest. And because of the vagueness of the definition, you can just say your forest cover is increasing, but this is the case for a lot of our environmental norms because they're so vague, they're so ill-defined. The data can be manipulated, and this was the case with the recent Forest Conservation Act that they're amending. What they actually brought it quite recently, it was on October 2nd, if I'm not wrong, and it was only published digitally, firstly, and it was only published in English. And the whole country doesn't speak English, and the whole country isn't online. So firstly, it's inaccessible, and the second issue, there are several issues with it, but the second one is the fact that they've diluted some of the norms in the Forest Amendment Act, Forest Conservation Act, my bad. The first is a lot of projects don't need the approvals that they would require before. The railways and the highways, the ministry won't need forest approvals, and if the land near borders is considered important or strategic, they won't need permissions anymore, and land that's been forested after 1996 won't be protected, and a customary afforestation won't be protected once again. So all of this really dilutes how we look at habitat and how environment is seen. And this isn't just the case today. We've been doing this with the EIA, which is the Environmental Impact Assessment, last year. So we've been diluting a lot of norms when it comes to environmental policy.
So, Disha, I'm sorry I'm cutting onto you because I'm just looking at the clock and I've just got a note. So it's not just that the clock is ticking on the planet, it's ticking on us as well. You've talked about the Environment Assessment Act. Parque Tiger Reserve, we're looking at that beautiful picture. We're allowing roads to go through that. We're allowing strategic projects to come up in the middle of biodiversity. And like you said, that we are beginning to equate tropical forests with just monoculture, trees that you're planting which have no biodiversity. And again, I think we don't understand how important biodiversity is. So I'm going to just jump back to Malaika for a bit. Malaika, you, as I said, have been across 7 continents. You were talking to me earlier about the human brain, So you've shot with tigers, you've been up close. Tell me what sort of mind shift you had, what was the experience of being so close to the species?
I think, I live in a city and I spend a lot of time in the jungle. And that juxtaposition got me thinking, humans have the most incredible brain. I mean, yes, often on camera I talk about how octopuses are really smart or tigers are remarkably intelligent. But the truth is that we are the smartest. We are the apex predator on this planet right now. And given that we have this brain that is so incredible, I mean, if you put us in the same room as a tiger, we'd be eaten in seconds. But yet, using our brain, we are able to build highways into, pristine forests. We're able to build massive amounts of infrastructure. But if we could also realize how important the climate crisis is and how important it is to combat it right now, we could actually use that very brain and harness that to change things around. And I think the solutions are there, the science is out there. And right now, it's just about realizing that this is a big enough issue to invest in. It's a big enough issue to be a national and a global priority. And I think that's what it really boils down to.
Right. You spoke about palm oil earlier. When we're talking about the fact that even as we're talking about climate change, there's so much climate consciousness, we're not looking at the habitats, which is the building block of that. So with all our current day awareness, we're still powering through with things which will be difficult for us. So talk about your experience with palm oil, and why is that a concern area for you?
Yeah, that's something that has really shook me and disturbed me of late. And I'm going to look at my notes because I don't want to get the facts wrong. But a recent proposal aims to boost palm oil production in India by promoting its cultivation in the Northeast and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And that's disastrous because India aspires to bring 1 million hectares of land under palm oil cultivation by 2025. And this could lead to large-scale deforestation, disturbances in sensitive ecosystems, and even trigger land conflicts with people. And I'll tell you why it's so baffling, because there has been proof time and again, if we look at Southeast Asia, what's been happening there. Oil palm plantations currently cover more than 27 million hectares of the Earth's surface. And to put that into perspective, that's around 300 football fields that disappear in an hour. That's 300 football fields worth of forests, pure, pristine forests getting destroyed for palm oil plantations. And it's in India, especially in the Northeast India, I mean, Malaika and I have been there in Arunachal Pradesh. They're some of the most beautiful natural forests with lots of biodiversity, like countless species that are found nowhere else in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. We're going to lose all of that to oil. I'm shaking, sorry, because it's really disturbing. And we're going to lose all of that for oil palm plantation. And it's been proven that it's the Northeast is not even viable for it. I'll read out a quote from the senior scientist called Dr. Varun Goswami. He recently gave a quote to Round Glass, and he said that he's surprised that Northeast is being viewed as a major destination for the expansion of oil palm in India. Scientific evidence suggests that region is climatically ill-suited for oil palm, actually. And it appears that the draw is because of the presence of large tracts of forests. But by the time we realize that the yield from Northeast India is not enough, it'll be too late. All the forests will already be cut down. So it's something that we need to think about, consult experts, consult scientists before actually thinking
Going
of
ahead
doing
with it.
this. Yeah.
Gunjan, I'm sorry, I'm
I'm done.
cutting in because I'm actually personally feeling bad to make this so short because you, as I said, you're our hope for the future. Just last thoughts, all three of you. Why did the three of you get so involved with climate and with environment? Disha, you start.
So I've personally been impacted by the climate crisis because my grandparents are farmers and they had to suffer through the water crisis when I was much younger. And my mother actually had to carry water before she went to school. And this essentially is what led me to be a part of the climate movement, and just the fact that indigenous people, Adivasis, environmental defenders are hurt every single day for doing the very work that will protect all of us is what makes me concerned. I think one example is the fact that Hidme Markham, who's an Adivasi woman who's been arrested on Women's Day this year for protesting against coal mines, which we all know is bad for us for several reasons. And I think just the fact that this is how we treat our environmental defenders, this is how we treat our planet, and I wanted to change that. And that's essentially why I got involved.
You, Malaika?
I think for me, it was realizing that the narrative needed to shift to help us understand that protecting wildlife isn't really about, protecting obscure animals in the middle of nowhere, but it's about protecting ourselves, and it makes good business sense to protect the planet right now. All of these things, run in my head, but the one incident that I can say really, really solidified my passion for protecting the planet was when I saw a blue whale up close. I looked a blue whale in the eye, and I just realized that this is the largest animal that has ever lived on our planet. And if we as human beings can decimate wildlife, we can remove, animals and species and ecosystems that took millions and millions of years, then we're failing. And how do we become better ancestors? We become better ancestors by looking after the wildlife that we have, not just for them, but for us.
Right. And you, Malaika? You, Gunjan?
For me, I realized very early on that filmmaking is a really powerful medium. It can actually bring behavioral change and change policies if done the right way. And I studied in Bristol, so I actually saw a culture where 3 generations sit together and watch wildlife and conservation content on television on their main channel, BBC One, and that sort of culture doesn't exist in India. And I wanted to tell stories in a way that can be watched at prime time, and I think we're sitting right now in this room with so many people who have that decision-making power, so many commissioners who can actually bring these stories to mainstream audience. So we should really build towards having that collective consciousness in this next generation and tell stories that can reach the masses. Because if that is not there, then we won't be conscious as a whole generation, as a country. We really need to expand the storytelling and get our stories to reach people of India.
Thank you very much, all three of you. I just wanted to emphasize one thing that she said, which is that the EIA now allows post facto clearance, which is that you create the mess and then you can pay for it and move on. So it's just at odds with everything else that we are saying. And Malaika, though she hasn't been able to speak of it, has followed the wild meat trail. We've suffered, the entire world came to a standstill because of wild meat sale, the food chain, everything that's going wrong because we're killing habitats. It's a story we'll have to hear another day, maybe on this channel, but thank you very much, all three of you.
Thank you.
You.